Good evening, directors. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to listen to our special education supervisors tonight as they present the plan that we're going to be hopefully rolling forward in the upcoming weeks and months. Starting with, you met them all before, they're all here, starting with our grade 10 through 12 special ed supervisor, Mr. David Krakauer, and then grades 7 to 9, Mrs. Katie Davis, grades 4 to 6, Dr. Purcell Whitaker, and then grades K to 3, Miss Amy Hiller. I'll turn it over to Mr. Krakauer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. Oh, that seems a little loud. Is that loud? Am I loud? Thanks again, Mr. Rizzo. Thank you very much to the school board directors for allowing us to speak again to provide another update for the Springford School District in regards to special education. So Rich, as I continue to progress through the slides here, I'll just ask you to move to the next slide for me, please. Okay? All right, Rich, next slide, please. So we thought it was important to highlight where we are as of today. So our current in-person programming, there are 3 bulleted items on the PowerPoint. 1, currently our career and technical education students are receiving in-person instruction. And that is not only for students with disabilities, but also our general education students are receiving in-person instruction. The other bullet that's up there is our psychologists have started testing our students for evaluations and reevaluations. This started during the week of September 1st. And so far all has gone well. They are seeing multiple students during the course of the week to continue with their evaluations and reevaluations. Our low incidence classrooms. Today was our first in-person instruction day for students in our low incidence classrooms. We had 114 students present today out of 166 students. So roughly about 69% of our families chose to be in person in our low incidence classrooms. I feel like I just need to take a quick moment to thank a lot of people in regard for today to happen, from our teachers to our instructional assistants, to our administrative team, to our food services personnel, to transportation, to our secretarial staff in the buildings. There was a lot of planning to make today possible for our students to return in the building. And I thought right now was the appropriate time to thank everyone. Today was great. The students, when they came off the buses, they were ecstatic, lots of smiles. The first student arrived this morning at roughly about 7:15. And when she got out of the car from her mom dropping her off, she was literally jumping up and down in excitement that she was back in school. So all in all, at all levels, K to 12, things went well today. And there are a lot of people that made today happen. So I thought it was the right time to thank a lot of different groups with all the planning that took place. Next slide, please. So the next slide is in regards to our next phase of in-person program and instruction for special education. If you remember when I spoke in early August, we did discuss having a phase-in approach or a tiered approach of bringing our students with disabilities back into the building. So as you'll see, as I continue to talk here, that is our plan as a district as we continue to move forward to slowly bring some students back into the building. So our tiered level of support for students include learning support, emotional support, autistic support, multiple disability support, life skills support, hearing support, and vision support. And these supports will continue as we move through each phase. So before I get into the dates and grade spans and expectations, I thought it was important just to explain what itinerant, supplemental, and full-time level special ed support services mean, just so everyone had a good understanding of me using some of this terminology as throughout the presentation. So when we talk about our full-time students, those are students that are receiving less than 20% of their day is included in the general education class. So roughly about 20% of their day would be in gen education. Supplemental level of students, they receive about 20% of their day, between 20 and 80% of the day is in the special education classroom. So they are receiving some type of special ed services and supports as a supplemental level student. Our itinerant level of students, they receive about 20% or less of their day of special education services and supports. So that just gives you an idea if you hear me mention full-time students to supplemental students to itinerant level of students. As you can see on the bottom there, we do want to state that the dates that we are presenting tonight are subject to change. And as I get through the PowerPoint, we'll explain some reasons why they may be subject to change. So our next date to bring in-person students would be October 8th. We would be looking at bringing K-4 supplemental students in first, and that would be for a full day. Just to give you an idea of roughly how many students we're talking about K-4, it is 98 students. A few days later, October 12th, 2020, we would look to move to 5 to 12 students receiving supplemental level of support for a full day. To give you an idea per level, 68 students in the 5th and 6th grade, 44 7th, 25 8th, 22 and 9th, and 79 10 to 12. And again, these are roundabout numbers that I'm providing you tonight. And then a week later on October 19th, we would look to bring in our K-4 itinerant students for a full day. And roughly itinerant level students, K-4, is 126 students. And then a few days later, again, October 22nd, we would be looking to bring in our 5 to 12 itinerant level students. And again, by grade span, 5-6 is 100 students, 7th is 65, 8th grade is 81, 9th grade is 85, and 10th to 12th is 217. So if I would combine all three areas of our full-time students and low incidence that started today, our supplemental level of students and our itinerant level of students, that would roughly be about 1,176 students that we'd be looking to possibility of bringing in by October 22nd. One reason why we started October 8th and we spaced out a few days in between our tiered rollout is to be able to deploy anything service-wise, whether it's technology, whether it's curriculum, whether it's ourselves. We felt it was important to have all the necessary resources to be able to deploy K-4 in case we needed to problem solve any areas. So that's one reason why we went with a tiered approach throughout the course of October. Next slide, please. So I mentioned on the previous slide that the dates are subject to change, and these are some reasons and some considerations for why we might have to change some dates. So when we take a look at staffing, teachers and instructional assistants, we need to make sure we have enough staff in the building to be able to implement each phase of our plan. Substitutes, we feel like we are going to need substitutes. There may be some of our staff that have to request a leave. Those staff have been asked to reach out to human resources if a leave is necessary. Nurse needs. Right now with our low incidence classrooms, we are not using 4 elementary school buildings. So in order to implement our plan, we would need additional nurses because right now in each one of our buildings that are being utilized, we do have a nurse in the nurses suite and a nurse in health annex. And then as part of our health and safety plan for nursing needs. Another consideration that we continue to work through is technology needs for K-6. As you all know, we are 1-to-1, 7 to 12. So the technology concerns are not that great 7 to 12 because we are 1-to-1 with Chromebooks. But not all of our students in K-6 right now have 1-to-1 devices. Transportation needs to fall into place for the different tiers. And we have worked very closely with Chief Boyer. And gloves and sneeze guards are two areas of PPE that we are waiting for. The gloves are expected to be in, I believe, in the next week. We do have gloves currently in our low incidence classrooms, but to have enough gloves to start incorporating more students for our staff and students if need be is something that we needed to put under for consideration. So these are considerations that many of them we've already started throughout our planning process. So as far as substitutes and nurse needs and notifying staff and teachers and instructional assistants of the plan for a tiered plan. Next slide, please. So we thought it was important to be transparent with their community and the school board of what a typical day of in-person instruction would look like. So a typical day of in-person instruction for students may include the following. And the key word here is may. They could receive live in-person special education services instruction. Students attending classes virtually in Canvas with teacher support, instructional assistant support, or in a study hall. And I want to talk a little bit to the first two bulleted items, just because depending on how many staff we have in the building through the different tiers will depend on, I'll use me for an example. If I was in 4 general education classes and 3 of my gen ed teachers are teaching in the building, I would be able to go to their class directly for my classes. At that time, I would have to participate still remotely on the computer because our teachers will still have to teach to the computer. And the teachers that are in the building, they also would have to have, while they're teaching to the computer, they also have their mask on. So our students that would be in the classes, and that could be a regular ed class or a special ed classroom, they would have their devices out with their headphones on, and they would be participating with their headphones on. Now, the educational benefit comes when that teacher is done with the live instruction piece. And let's say there were 10 or 15 minutes left in the class, our students can gain the educational benefit of getting that individualized instruction or extra support that they needed. Or on the asynchronous days where the teacher on Monday did a 45-minute live lesson, but on Tuesday, it's an asynchronous activity and some independent work that might be given. Our students that are in person, again, that educational benefit of receiving that in-person support in the instruction that they're being provided. And for my example of Dave, for my 4th period, if Mr. Fitzgerald is not in the building and he is my history teacher, we would have to have study halls set up in the building for students to go for supervision to participate in their class. So an example here at the high school would be the Herta Learning Center. It's a large enough space that we'd be able to spread out. It's conducive to learning where students could put their laptop on the table. And we would need to make sure that we have supervision in the Herta Learning Center for the possibility of 20 or 30, 40 students if we're able to keep the 6 feet distance in the Herta Learning Center. So that's what a day typically could look like when we start to incorporate more students within the classroom. And we do need to be mindful of our teachers because they still would be teaching to the computer while they do have some students within their classroom. Our goal for related services in regards to speech, OT, PT, counseling, we want to do our best to try to provide that in person as much as we can. And I forgot to mention earlier that through our tiered level support, we would still be 4 days a week. It would still be a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday option of being in person. And Wednesday would be similar to what's happening now with the rest of the school district. So related services, we would do the best we can to provide as many of the related services in person. And we just put a little note on there. I talked about that on a previous slide that, contingent upon staffing on what a student's day would look like. Next slide, please. So next steps. We did send out a survey in early August to all the families with students with disabilities. We feel like it's important to get some updated data. I can share some results in regards to that survey in early August. Here it is. So we had 1,287 families fill out the survey. At that time, 730 opted for in-person instruction. So we feel like it's been about 5 weeks or so since we collected that data. We felt it was important to send another survey out so we can get a better idea if families have changed their minds, whether they changed their mind of in-person or virtual. We did see that with our low incidence families, that some families, as we did get closer to today, did change their mind of in-person or virtual. So we feel like that's important as a next step. I talked about next steps with staffing needs, transportation needs, communication with parents. The survey is scheduled to go out tomorrow. Also with a link to the presentation tonight so everyone can get a good understanding of what we're presenting here. Continue to assess and evaluate programming and make changes as necessary. And the last bullet, I didn't talk much about tonight, but we felt like it was important to have this be a part of our presentation. So in transparency with our community and the board, that we have had conversations of consideration with students with 504 plans and our ELL students. Where do they fall within the continuum? Through our administrative meetings and planning and preparing for our students with disabilities, these two areas have been brought up. When's the right time? Where do they fit into the continuum? And those conversations will continue as we progress here over the next couple of weeks. So that is the end of our presentation, and we'll take any questions that the school board might have.
I was wondering, as far as the backlog of evaluations, are we making some headway with those?
Great question. It's going to be a while before we make some really good headway. I can't remember, you know the exact number roughly? Okay. We started with roughly about 175 evaluations at the start of the school year. We did ask the psychologist that typical year, to start the school year, they're usually below 10. So that gives you an idea of the volume of testing and students that need to be seen. And those are only from last school year. We still have 3-year anniversary dates that are coming up, the students that are going to be due this year for reevaluations, and that doesn't include any new initial evaluation requests that we receive here in the next few months.
I think at your last presentation, I made a request to let the board know what you needed to alleviate this backlog. Mm-hmm. Was that request was put forth to us?
Yes, and you approved additional psychologist support.
So what else do you need to expedite this backlog? Hey, we're all big boys and girls here, so if you need help, you got to tell us.
Yeah, I think at this point, we have tremendous psychologists that just got started with their testing. We do have approval for additional psychologist funds. And I think I did state this in early August, that every district in the Commonwealth is facing what we're facing. So to go out there and be able to find 10 school psychologists that are available right now is pretty slim. So I think we'll have a better handle here in the next couple of weeks once the psychologist starts seeing some students, and then be able to provide us an update on how much headway they're making with their caseload. So I think what you provided to us in August, it was great. We appreciate it. Our school psychologists were very thankful. They thanked us multiple times. They thanked you as well. So I think right now we just need to allow our psychologists to continue to test some students. We have the additional help that's on the way, and that's going to help out a lot.
All right, thank you.
So I have a question too before you, whoever can, well, maybe, it doesn't matter. I guess I have a question about the students that, I guess during their regular ed class that would be in a study hall per se and working virtually through their regular classes. Is there staff there that's helping them when they need that extra help, or really just monitoring it? How does that work out?
So that's all going to depend on who's in the building at the time of our tiered level of support. So the example I provided earlier, if I had Mr. Fitzgerald as a history teacher and Mr. Fitzgerald was not able to work in the building on October 12th, I would have to report to, let's just per se, I would go to the Herta Learning Center, and I would still have to participate remotely. The teachers in their primary focus would just be the supervision piece. You know, at the high school level, would they have opportunities to get additional support? We do. We have our study support room, and our two ladies that provide support in there are here in the building. So there would be opportunities, but we felt that we needed to be transparent on what that would look like, because students wouldn't be walking into Springford High School pre-COVID, where it was live, where there was classmates, that there would be a possibility that we would have to develop these study halls within the buildings for supervision purposes.
All right, thank you.
So,
I had two questions. I guess one in follow-up to Mr. Jackson. When we meet again in 2 weeks, Dr. Gooden, would you be able to bring to us kind of an idea of where we are so that we have an idea of timeline and what we're looking at in terms of how long it'll take us to get through this backlog of 175? I think that'll give us a month into school when we meet again in 2 weeks. So that'll give us at least a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at from a timing perspective. The other question I had was with regards to GIEPs. And what are we doing when it comes to our gifted students who also have IEPs, and what kind of support are we offering them, or is there anything that we're doing to assist them as you know, we're in this virtual setting?
So as of right now, students that just solely have a GIEP, we have no intentions of bringing them in October. We have discussed students with GIEPs. We do have students within the district that are duly identified. They have a GIEP and an IEP. And if a student is duly identified, they would fall into our tiered level of support that we just shared with you in October. But as of right now, our intentions are not to bring GIEP students in for the month of October. Could that change moving forward? Maybe at the beginning of November, that's a possibility. But right now, our intentions are not for October.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. I believe Dr. Witter had a comment about psychologists.
Jumped out of my skin here. Good evening. I just wanted to be clear about the school psychologist, so you know, full transparency. A school psychologist has 60 calendar days to complete their evaluation. Regardless of the backlog, they still are entitled legally to 60 calendar days. And they need those days because we're required to complete a comprehensive assessment that evaluates all areas of suspected disability. So I just want to be clear about that, so there's no expectation they're going to get these done in 2 weeks. Okay. All right, thank you.
so I have a quick question. When I saw the schedule, an amount of time that it's spread out to bring these students in, I'm a little concerned because these are students with special needs. These are students that require a lot, you know, from the school district. You know, we're there to provide a service. We're there to help the parents to be part of their lives. And I was kind of disheartened to see the amount of time that it's going to take to bring that student population into the school. And when I went through the presentation, I'm not really sure why.
So through our meetings administratively, we felt like October 8th was the earliest that we can do our next tiered level of support. When we first started to have conversations, we talked about spreading it out even more, where we're looking at 2 weeks in between different tiers. So in this presentation, with some of the things that do need to fall in place administratively, we looked at October 8th, and then within a 2-week period of time, we are now looking to bring in the majority of our special education students. Where prior, we were looking at a further out period of time where it was 2 weeks in between our next phase tiers. So you can see here, we go October 8th, and then we're a couple of days later. So from October 8th to, I think it was the 19th or the 22nd, within the 2-week period of time, we would be bringing in all of our students with disabilities.
I guess the reason I bring this up is because, and again, I'm sure the administration hears this all the time, and because I'm hearing it all the time. Other school districts are doing the same thing we're doing when it comes to students with special needs. And some districts have already brought in the lion's share of the students. And how do I answer the question? We're Springford. How do I answer the question when other districts are doing this and we can't, and we're not? I don't want to say we can't. That's not the right word. We're not.
Yeah, from the county meetings that we participated in, and you guys can speak up if I'm not correct, but we're pretty much in alignment with happening within the rest of the county. There are some districts that haven't even started to bring in their low incidence students where we have. There are some students that are only bringing their low incidence classrooms in for a couple hours a day. So while I understand your point, I think through our meetings, we're in alignment with what's happening throughout the county. I know Mr. Fitzgerald has worked with other school districts. We've worked closely with legal in regards to this. I think just through administratively, we think October 8th is a good target date to have some of those considerations fall into place. And I can't sit here today and give you 110% commitment that all those considerations are going to fall into place. I think our goal with the administrative team was to try to get the students with disabilities in as quick as we can, but also to make sure we're doing it in the safest way possible. So today was a big first step for our district where our low incidence students were in the buildings. And, we'll continue to plan moving forward to bring additional students in.
To underscore what Mr. DeBello said, and I'll ask this question again. Is there anything that the board can do to assist you with this? Or are you comfortable with where you're at right now? You got to learn to take help.
Mr. Jackson, I'll tell you, for the last 5-6 months, I haven't really been comfortable with a lot of things that we've been doing because things change on a daily basis. So for me to sit up here, I appreciate you asking that question. I feel like right now, those considerations that I put up there in regards to identifying our staff, our instructional assistants, Mrs. Lease has already reached out for substitutes. She's already reached out for nurses. So those conversations have been happening. I think right now, I wouldn't sit here and tell you, me personally, I'm completely comfortable because I feel like things change on a daily basis. I feel like we're moving in the right direction. We've had a lot of conversations over the last couple of weeks to move forward with this plan. So I think right now we need those things to fall into place to be able to meet those dates that we put up on that slide.
All right, thank you.
Very much like to see the plan. So thank you for sharing that with us and the details of that in a way that we could all understand it also.
I'd like to say thank you and my appreciation for the hard work and Dr. Gooden for all of the administrators. I think from the moment that the decision was made to go virtual, we were looking for a way to help our students, the low incidence students in particular, and working, and this is a step, this is a really great day that you started this, bringing the students back in. So thank you for all the efforts. This is really good.
Just curious, and thank you again. I mean, or how much indigestion, there's a professional term for you, our counselor knows that, would you get if we compress the time frame to sort of accelerate it? I'm just curious how much room we have if that direction were given. And I felt compelled to ask you that because that's where my head's at.
Yeah,
I'm trying to lean that way.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. And I'll get back to the one slide, that first group of the staffing piece. Me personally, I think it's important that we're giving our staff enough time to take care of whatever family situations that they have going on, to be able to give them enough time to prepare for what's coming. And for some of our teachers that have young ones at home, whether that's finding daycare, that's finding a nanny at home, and making preparations for that, that's a big part of what's going to happen next. And then for the staff that do need to take leave, being able to find good quality substitutes that's really going to take care of our kids, our students. Because right now, I know we've had a couple of substitutes that were hard to find, LTSs, for the start of the school year, but HR and administrative, we worked really hard to make that happen. So that staffing piece with the subs and of course the nurses, to be able to open those 4 buildings, we would need additional nurses. And the nurses are hard to come by as well.
So
So
just
we-
to focus this conversation, you feel that this timeline that you've given us provides you with the time to get the resources you need to effectively educate the kids who have IEPs and get them in the school safely? Is that?
Administratively, you know, we feel October 8th right now would be a good target date.
I know I get lots and lots and lots and lots of emails from parents. So I'll be curious to hear what feedback you're getting from parents based on this proposed timeline.
You want me to respond to that now or in a few weeks?
Either or.
Okay, well, I can speak from experience from our first survey of bringing our low incidence classrooms. From the very beginning, when our low incidence families knew that there was a plan, that we were moving forward towards that plan, that there was a date in mind, they were super excited that there was an opportunity to choose whether they wanted in-person or virtual. I can tell you for the families that I've spoken to that receive supplemental or itinerant level of support, I've told them that plans are coming, dates are coming. They were happy of the fact that we are considering bringing more students in person for some services. I can't tell you, Mr. Jackson, that every parent is happy with us that it would be October 8th, because that's not true. Because I have spoken to some unhappy community members that want it sooner. But I've also spoken to community members and our parents that are happy that there's a date in mind, that we're thinking out the process, thinking out the process and what needs to be done to make it happen. And as I talked a little bit about what a typical day would look like, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that that's ideal, but the fact that the educational benefit of receiving some in-person support and in-person instruction, being in a school building, social and emotional reasons of being in a school building, being able to get into a classroom, those are some things that we didn't talk a whole lot about tonight. We talked about it instructionally, but just a routine of getting on a bus or having their parents drop them off and going to first period and walking in the hallways, that's our kids, that's how they know school. That's how we know school. So I don't want to underestimate that part of it. We didn't talk much about it, but there are benefits on just being in the building, being able to go to room 103, being able to go to room 110, being able to socialize a little bit with my peers, being to socialize in person with my colleagues. And I can tell you, when the teachers were back in the building 2 weeks, I jumped up the opportunity to get out of my office and go have a conversation in the teacher's classroom, because I didn't have to do it via phone and I didn't have to jump on a Zoom call. I can do what we all know pre-COVID is to have a nice conversation face-to-face, obviously socially distancing, but to go see that teacher or staff member.
Right now, you're the smartest person in this room. And the reason why is you talked about the word plan with dates. And it gives parents something to work with. So I sincerely applaud you for that.
I think I'm up there with intelligence, but that's all right. I'm joking. For anybody that has known me, please do not look up my grade transcripts from this fine school as well. I'm just curious. There were a few sort of seemingly staffing obstacles that seem to be the delay to the 4 weeks. And I'm not, Mrs. Lee's not going to put you on the spot here. But if we can identify those, right, and if that's the roadblocks, I mean, can we put together a plan that maybe is, rather than 4 weeks, it's 2 weeks, right? I just think that that's at least that would be, and then I'm obviously one member of this board. So, but just leaning towards, let's start with we're in, and then deal with the real issues versus the perception of challenges, right? And move forward with that. And that'll be the last I say on this thing. And thank you very much again for all that you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome.
Does any other board want to comment on that part that Mr. Schaefer suggested about moving up the timeline, any comments on that further? Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your
You're welcome.
presentation and for your plan, as Mr. Jackson said.